Dr. Kim Hyun rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the screen again. The data hadn't changed. Something big was moving toward Earth from beyond Jupiter, something that shouldn't be there. "Sir, you need to see this," he called to his boss. It was 3 a.m. at the Korean Space Agency, and most people had gone home. But not Kim. He always stayed late, watching the stars. Tonight, the stars had something new to show. Director Kang walked over, his coffee mug in hand. "What am I looking at, Kim?" "These readings." Kim pointed to the screen. "I've checked 3 times. There's a large group of objects moving past Jupiter. They're heading our way." The director leaned closer. "Meteors?" "No, sir. They're changing course. Meteors don't do that." The room went quiet. Both men knew what this meant. After decades of searching the sky for signs of alien life, it had found Earth instead. Within 48 hours, every major space agency on Earth had confirmed Kim's discovery. The objects were moving quickly, and there were hundreds of them. They would reach Earth in about 2 months. Kim sat in a large meeting room at the United Nations in New York. Scientists and military leaders from around the world filled the seats. On the big screen at the front, images from the most powerful telescopes showed the fleet of strange ships. "We've tried to contact them on all known frequencies," said NASA's director. No response yet. A general from the Russian Space Force stood up. "We must prepare for the possibility that they are not friendly." The room erupted in argument. Some believed the aliens must be peaceful if they were advanced enough for space travel. Others feared the worst. Kim stayed quiet, studying the images. Something about the formation of the ships bothered him. "They're in attack formation," said a quiet voice beside him. Kim turned to see Captain Lee Jin of the EIDV Sentinel, Earth's first real space warship. Though small and new, the Sentinel was the best defense Earth had. "How can you tell?" Kim asked. 20 years in the Navy before space duty, Lee said. "That's not an exploration group. That's an invasion fleet." The world changed overnight. News of the alien fleet spread everywhere. Some people panicked, emptying stores and fleeing cities. Others formed prayer groups. Many just waited, glued to their screens for updates. In Korea, Kim worked day and night with a team of scientists. They had one job: learn everything possible about the aliens before they arrived. "Dr. Kim, we've got something," called Dr. Park's son, their top biologist. She had been studying the light patterns from the alien ships. Kim rushed to her station. "What is it?" "Unusual radiation. Not dangerous to us, but it's coming from all their ships. It's not like anything we use." Kim nodded. "Good work. Keep tracking it. Any new information helps." His phone rang. It was Captain Lee. "Kim, we're being sent up. The Sentinel launches tomorrow on a recon mission. We need you on board." "Me? But I'm not." "Direct orders. You know more about these visitors than anyone. Pack light. We leave at dawn." The Sentinel wasn't built for comfort. Kim strapped into a seat that felt too small next to 5 crew members who all looked much more prepared than him. Captain Lee sat at the command station, calmly checking systems. "First time in space, Doctor?" asked Engineer Choi Ta, noticing Kim's white knuckles as the engine started. "Is it that obvious?" Kim tried to smile. "Everyone's nervous their first time," Choi said kindly, "even without aliens waiting up there." The launch pushed Kim back into his seat. Earth fell away below them, beautiful and blue, and suddenly very fragile looking. 6 hours later, they were in stable orbit, preparing for the longer journey to the edge of Mars' orbit, where they would hide and observe the alien fleet as it passed. "Message from command," called the communications officer. "The aliens are broadcasting." Lee switched on the main screen. Static cleared to show a being unlike anything Kim had ever seen. It had 4 eyes arranged in a square on a head that seemed too large for its thin, pale body. When it spoke, its mouth moved wrong, like it had too many joints. The words came through in a flat, computerized English. "People of Earth, we are the Vorna. Your planet is now ours. Surrender and some may live to serve. Resist and all will die. You have 30 Earth days to decide. The screen went black. Silence filled the Sentinel's bridge. Then Captain Lee spoke. Well, that answers whether they're friendly. He turned to his crew. New mission. We're not just watching anymore. We need to find a weakness. The Sentinel took up position in Saturn's rings, hidden among the ice and rock. From there, they watched as the Vorna fleet approached Jupiter. More messages came to Earth, each more threatening than the last. Earth's governments tried to unite. Some countries prepared to fight. Others wanted to surrender. The first global defense fleet was assembled, but everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. The Vorna ships were too big, too advanced. On the Sentinel, Kim spent his time studying every bit of data they could gather. Captain Lee ran battle simulations, though none showed any hope of victory. Look at this, Kim said one day, calling Lee to his workstation. Their main ships haven't changed course at all since we first spotted them. Is that important? Lee asked. Ships that size should make small adjustments constantly. It's like they're on rails. Engineer Choi joined them. I've noticed something about their energy readings too. They pulse at exact intervals. Too exact. Meaning what? Lee asked. Meaning they're very predictable, Choi said, which might help us if we have to fight. 2 weeks after the first message, a group of smaller Vorna ships broke from the main fleet. They headed straight for the moon. They're setting up a forward base, Lee said, watching through the Sentinel's cameras. Standard invasion tactic. Establish a close position before the main assault. The lunar base went up quickly. The Vorna technology worked at amazing speed, building structures in hours that would have taken humans months. Then came the moment everyone feared. The first Vorna landing ships headed to Earth. All we can do is watch, Lee said grimly as they monitored the ships entering Earth's atmosphere. The landing crafts touched down in empty areas on every continent. The world held its breath, waiting for the slaughter to begin. But something strange happened. The expected attack didn't come. Instead, confused reports started coming in from near the landing sites. The Vorna are having trouble moving in our gravity, reported NASA. Many seemed disoriented. They're keeping their helmets on even in safe areas, said the European Space Agency. They seem afraid of our air. Kim and Park looked at each other. We need samples, Park said. If something about Earth is affecting them. We'll never get close enough, Lee objected. We might not need to, Kim said, an idea forming. Captain, can we get closer to one of their main ships without being seen? Possibly. Why? Because I think Earth itself might be fighting back for us. As the first Earth day ended with the Vorna on the planet, something even stranger happened. Several Vorna ships near Mars began to drift, their lights flickering. They're having power failures, Choi said, watching the readings. Multiple ships affected. It's spreading, Kim noted. Whatever is happening, it's getting worse for them. The Sentinel's communications officer called out. New transmission from the Vorna command. It's to their landing parties. The message wasn't meant for human ears, but Earth systems had already cracked the Vorna's basic encryption. The translation came through broken but clear enough. All forces withdraw from planetary surface. Unknown contamination detected. Repeat. Withdraw immediately. Kim and Park worked through the night, comparing notes on everything they had observed. By morning, they had a theory. It's us, Park said simply. Humans. Life on Earth. We're toxic to them. Explain, Captain Lee demanded. The Vorna come from a different environment. Maybe one with different air, different bacteria, Kim said. Something common and harmless to us is deadly to them. Like European explorers bringing smallpox to the Americas, Park added. Except this time, we're the ones with the biological advantage. Lee looked at his screens, where more Vorna ships were now showing signs of trouble. The main fleet had slowed its approach. So what do we do with this information? He asked. Kim looked at the captain with the first real hope since the aliens had been discovered. We fight back, not with weapons, but with what makes Earth unique. He pointed to the blue planet visible on the main screen. With life. The first battle for Earth had begun, and the planet itself was their strongest weapon. The Vorna scout ships hovered over major cities, their dark shapes blocking the sun. But they didn't attack. 3 days had passed since the first landings, and the aliens seemed hesitant. "They're waiting for something," Captain Lee said, watching the feeds from Earth. The Sentinel remained hidden in Saturn's rings, observing the main Vorna fleet, which had slowed its approach. "Or they're already having problems," Dr. Kim replied. "Look at their landing parties." The camera feeds showed Vorna troops moving slowly, almost clumsily. Even in their protective suits, they seemed to struggle with Earth's gravity and atmosphere. Engineer Choi pointed to his screen. "Their energy readings are changing. The ships over Beijing and New York are using more power than yesterday, but doing less. They're compensating for something," Dr. Park said. "Maybe system failures." Kim nodded. "We need more data. And a closer look." On Earth, humans watched the alien ships with fear and wonder. Military forces surrounded the landing sites, but kept their distance as ordered. The last thing Earth's leaders wanted was to start a fight they couldn't win. In Seoul, scientists worked around the clock, studying everything they could about the Vorna. One team had managed to collect air samples near a landing site. "There's something here," said a young lab technician, looking at a slide under a microscope. "The air near their ships has fewer microbes than normal." Her supervisor looked confused. "They're sterilizing our air, or consuming the microbes somehow." The information was sent to the global science team and eventually to the Sentinel. "Captain, we need to move closer to their main fleet," Kim insisted after reading the latest reports from Earth. "That would be suicide," Lee replied. "Their sensors would detect us immediately." "Not if we use the radiation from Saturn as cover," Engineer Choi suggested. "The rings give off enough interference that we might slip by unnoticed if we time it right." Captain Lee considered this. "How close do you need to get?" "Close enough to gather biological samples from their ship exhaust," Dr. Park said. "If my theory is correct, they're already contaminated with Earth's microbes from their scouts, and it's spreading through their fleet." Lee looked at his crew. They were scared but determined. "One pass," he decided. "We make one close pass, gather what we can, and retreat." The Sentinel slipped out from the rings of Saturn when the planet was between them and the Vorna fleet. They coasted silent and dark, using minimal power. "Vorna main fleet in visual range," the pilot announced. On the screen, they saw the massive alien ships. Up close, they were even more impressive and terrifying. Each was the size of a small city, with strange angles and glowing sections that hurt the eyes to look at directly. "Their design is wrong somehow," Choi whispered. Dr. Park monitored her collection equipment, ready to gather samples. "Something's happening," the communications officer said suddenly. "Multiple energy spikes. There. I think they're sending landing craft toward Mars." "Why Mars?" Lee wondered. "There's nothing there but research stations." Kim watched intently. "They're avoiding Earth. They're scared of something on Earth." The Sentinel glided silently past the outer edge of the Vorna fleet. Dr. Park's equipment gathered particles and radiation from the alien ship's exhaust. "Got it," she said after a tense minute. "We have samples." "Get us out of here," Lee ordered the pilot. As they turned to retreat, alarms blared. "We've been spotted." Vorna ship changing course to intercept. "Full power to engines," Lee commanded. "Evasive maneuvers." The Sentinel shot forward, racing away from the pursuing Vorna vessel. Everyone held tight as the ship shook with the strain. "They're gaining on us," the pilot reported. "Wait. Look." Choi pointed at his screen. "The Vorna ship, it's slowing down." Sure enough, the alien vessel's pursuit was faltering. Its lights flickered, and it began to drift sideways. "What's happening to them?" Lee asked. "I think we're about to find out," Park said, looking at her samples under a microscope. "Oh my, Captain, you need to see this." Back on Earth, the Vorna landing parties were clearly in trouble. Several had abandoned their ground positions and returned to orbit. Others had sealed themselves in their ships, refusing to exit even in their protective suits. In a secured laboratory beneath Seoul, scientists had captured footage of a Vorna whose suit had been damaged in a minor accident. The alien inside was suffering, its skin covered in what looked like a rash that spread visibly over its pale body. "It's reacting to our bacteria," the lead scientist reported to the Global Defense Council. "Common bacteria that live on human skin and in the air. To us, they're harmless. To the Vorna, they're deadly." "Are you saying they're allergic to Earth?" asked an American general. "It's more than an allergy," the scientist explained. "Their bodies have no defenses against our microorganisms. It's like their immune systems never evolved to fight infection. They must come from a completely sterile environment," another scientist suggested. "A world without the kind of microscopic life we take for granted." On the Sentinel, Dr. Park made the same discovery. "The samples from their ships are full of Earth bacteria," she explained to Captain Lee and Dr. Kim. "And the bacteria are thriving on whatever the Vorna used for life support." "How did Earth bacteria get into their main fleet?" Lee asked. "They haven't even reached Earth yet." "They're scout ships," Kim realized. "The ones that visited Earth brought back microscopic hitchhikers when they returned to the main fleet. And now those bacteria are spreading through their ships," Park added, "contaminating their air, water, food, everything." Engineer Choi looked up from his console. "Captain, more Vorna ships are showing power fluctuations. Whatever's happening, it's getting worse for them." Lee turned to Kim. "So what do we do? Wait for them all to get sick?" "No," Kim said. "We speed up the process." The plan came together quickly. The Sentinel returned to Earth, bringing their findings and samples. Within days, a desperate counterattack was organized. Every available ship was loaded with what seemed like an unusual weapon, containers of ordinary Earth bacteria, carefully selected to spread quickly in enclosed environments. Captain Lee addressed the pilots before launch. "Your mission is to get close enough to the Vorna ships to release these bacterial payloads near their external air systems. Don't engage in direct combat. Get in, deliver your package, and get out." Dr. Kim and Dr. Park had worked day and night to create the most effective mix of microbes. Nothing dangerous to humans, but apparently devastating to the Vorna. "It feels strange," Kim said as they watched the ships prepare for launch. "Fighting an advanced alien invasion with the same bacteria that give us the common cold." "Sometimes the simplest weapons are the most effective," Park replied. "The Vorna never considered that the smallest life forms on our planet would be their downfall." In space, the battle wasn't what anyone had expected. Earth's small fleet approached the Vorna armada cautiously. They expected to be destroyed instantly, but many Vorna ships were already drifting, their weapon systems offline. "They're sick," Captain Lee realized as the Sentinel led the Earth fleet. "Their crews are too sick to fight back at full strength." Some Vorna ships still functioned well enough to fire on Earth's vessels. 2 human ships were destroyed in bright flashes of light, but most of the Earth fleet managed to get close enough to release their bacterial payloads near the Vorna ship's external vents. "Now we wait," Lee said after they retreated to a safe distance. They didn't have to wait long. Within hours, more Vorna ships began to show signs of system failure. Some went completely dark. Others fired weapons randomly, sometimes hitting their own fleet. A message was broadcast from what appeared to be the Vorna command ship. "What have you done to us? What invisible weapon is this that burns from within?" Earth didn't respond. There was no need. The Vorna fleet began to break formation, some ships turning away from Earth. Others drifted helplessly in space. "They're retreating," Lee announced as they watched from the Sentinel. "They're actually retreating." Kim nodded, relief washing over him. Not retreating. Running. They're running from the smallest defenders Earth has, our microscopic allies. As they watched, the once mighty Vorna armada scattered. Some ships headed back the way they had come. Others moved toward Mars, perhaps hoping its different environment would be safer. But Earth's bacteria had already taken hold within their ships, and nowhere in the solar system would they find safety from an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't fight, and had never imagined could defeat them. The battle for Earth had turned. Humanity's greatest defense had turned out to be life itself, the endless, unstoppable force of evolution that had prepared Earth's organisms to survive in a dangerous universe. 1 week after the first bacterial attack, Earth's situation had changed completely. The Vorna invasion fleet was in chaos. Nearly half their ships drifted powerless in space. Others had retreated toward Mars orbit, but even there, problems followed them. In the Global Command Center beneath Geneva, military leaders watched the live feeds with cautious hope. "Is it really working?" asked the American general. "Are we winning with germs?" Dr. Kim nodded. He had been brought to Earth with the Sentinel's crew to help coordinate the global response. "The latest scans show bacterial spread throughout their fleet," he explained. "Their life support systems can't filter out what they don't understand." "But they're still dangerous," Captain Lee reminded everyone. "The functioning ships have enough firepower to destroy our major cities." On the big screen, they watched as 3 Vorna ships suddenly fired on a 4th. The targeted ship exploded in a flash of blue light. "They're destroying their own infected vessels," Dr. Park said, "trying to stop the spread." "It won't work," Kim said quietly. "The bacteria are everywhere now." In a sealed laboratory, Dr. Park worked with scientists from around the world. They had captured a small Vorna scout ship with 2 crew members still alive inside. Through a thick glass window, Park watched as medical teams in hazmat suits examined the aliens. The Vorna looked even worse up close, their skin covered in spreading patches that oozed clear fluid, their 4 eyes cloudy and unfocused. "They have no concept of immunity," the lead doctor reported. "No antibodies, no white blood cells as we understand them. Their biology is advanced in some ways, but completely defenseless against infection." "How is that possible?" Park wondered. "Even the simplest life forms on Earth have some defense against invasion." "They must come from a completely sterile environment," another scientist suggested. "A world without competing microscopic life." Park thought about this. "So when they encountered our world, full of billions of years of evolutionary competition, it was like introducing a lab animal to the wild," the doctor finished. "They had no chance." On the Sentinel, now orbiting Earth again, Engineer Choi made another discovery. "Captain, look at this," he called to Lee, who floated over in the zero gravity of the ship's laboratory. On Choi's screen was an analysis of the Vorna ship materials. "Their hull is made of biological components," Choi explained. "Not metal like ours, but something grown, like coral or shell." "What does that mean for us?" Lee asked. "It means our bacteria don't just affect their bodies. They're eating their ships too." Lee's eyes widened. "So the power failures are like infections in the ships themselves," Choi finished. "The Vorna built everything using biological technology. Everything is alive in some way. And everything can get sick." Dr. Kim brought this new information to the Global Command. Plans were already underway for a second, larger bacterial attack. "We need to target the remaining functional ships," Kim told the military leaders, "especially those near Mars." "Why Mars specifically?" asked the Russian commander. "Because it's their fallback position. They think Mars might be safer because it has no life of its own." "Is it safer?" someone asked. Kim smiled slightly. "No. Mars has Earth bacteria too, brought by our rovers and landers over the decades, and Mars dust storms can spread those bacteria quickly." The plan came together. Earth would launch a fleet of small, unmanned ships toward the Vorna positions near Mars. Each carried concentrated bacterial samples targeted at the biological weaknesses Choi had identified in the Vorna ships. "It's still dangerous," Captain Lee cautioned. "They'll destroy as many of our ships as they can." "That's why we need a distraction," Kim said. "Something to keep their attention while the bacterial ships get close enough." Lee looked at him. "You have something in mind." "Yes," Kim said. "The Sentinel." The mission was set. The Sentinel would approach the Vorna command ship openly, broadcasting a false surrender message from Earth. While the Vorna were focused on this apparent victory, the unmanned bacterial ships would slip in from another direction. "This is suicide," Lee told Kim as they prepared the Sentinel for launch. "You know that, right?" "We have better shields than the unmanned ships," Kim replied. "And we've upgraded the engines. We can outrun them if we time it right." "If they don't just blow us apart instantly," Lee muttered. Dr. Park joined them, carrying a small case. "I'm coming too." "Absolutely not," Lee said. "It's too dangerous." "You need me," Park insisted. "I've programmed the bacterial delivery systems, but they might need adjustments based on what we find." Lee looked like he wanted to argue more, but there was no time. The mission was scheduled to launch in 1 hour. The Sentinel approached Mars orbit cautiously. Ahead, they could see the remaining Vorna ships clustered together. Some were clearly damaged, with dark sections and flickering lights. Others still looked fully functional. "Begin transmission," Lee ordered. The communications officer sent the fake surrender message. "Attention Vorna Command. The nations of Earth wish to discuss terms of surrender. We send this ship as a gesture of peace." "They're responding," the officer reported after a tense minute. "They've ordered us to approach their main ship." "Perfect," Lee said grimly. "Right where we want to be." On a separate screen, they watched as their unmanned ships approached from Mars' far side, hidden from the Vorna's direct view. "Halfway there," Engineer Choi reported, tracking the unmanned fleet. The Sentinel continued forward, moving slowly toward the massive Vorna command ship. Up close, they could see odd discolorations on its hull, patches of what looked like mold or fungus spreading across its surface. "They're already infected," Park said, "but fighting it." "Vorna ship is scanning us," the sensor officer warned. "They've locked weapons." "Hold course," Lee ordered. "We need another 2 minutes to get the unmanned ships in position." The tension on the bridge was unbearable. Everyone knew they might be seconds from death. "Incoming message from Vorna Command," the communications officer announced. On the main screen, a Vorna appeared. This one looked different from those they'd seen before, larger with a protective suit that covered everything except its 4 eyes, which glared with hatred. "You think we don't know what you're doing?" the Vorna leader hissed through the translator. "You attack us with your biological weapons while offering false peace." Lee glanced at the tactical display. The unmanned ships needed 1 more minute. "We aren't attacking," Lee replied. "We genuinely seek peace." "Lies." The Vorna commander's voice rose to a shriek. "But we have learned your tricks. We have adapted. We will sterilize your world until nothing lives but what we allow." "Sir," Choi whispered urgently. Solar flare detected coming from Mars' direction. A massive burst of radiation was indeed heading toward them, and toward the Vorna fleet. It had been hidden by Mars until now. "The unmanned ships," Park said. "The radiation will kill the bacteria." "No," Kim said suddenly, understanding. "It will spread them. Solar radiation will break open the containment units and scatter the bacteria through the Vorna fleet on charged particles they can't filter. All ships, take evasive action," Lee commanded. "Radiation shields to maximum." The Sentinel turned away from the Vorna command ship, engines firing at full power. Behind them, the solar flare hit the unmanned fleet first, then washed over the Vorna ships. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The bacterial containers ruptured, releasing clouds of microscopic life that rode the solar radiation directly into the Vorna ships through every tiny crack and opening. On the screens, they watched as Vorna ships began to fail one after another. Lights flickered out, Weapons systems fired randomly. Some ships began to drift, spinning slowly out of control. "It's working better than we planned," Park said in awe. The Vorna command ship fired at the Sentinel, but the beam went wide as the ship's systems failed mid-attack. A final message came through, broken and distorted. "What are you? How can invisible enemies defeat us? We came to conquer worlds, not be devoured by them." Then silence. The Sentinel circled back at a safe distance. The Vorna fleet was in complete disarray. Some ships were completely dark. Others were self-destructing in flashes of blue fire. The rest were turning away, trying to flee the solar system. "They're running," Lee said quietly. "They're actually running. From bacteria," Kim added. "From life itself." Earth had won its first interstellar war not with superior technology, but with the smallest warriors on the planet. Microscopic life forms that had evolved over billions of years to survive in the competitive environment of Earth. Against such defenders, even the mighty Vorna had no answer. 3 weeks after the battle near Mars, the Earth celebrated its unexpected victory. Cities that had been emptied in panic were full again. People who had hidden underground returned to the surface. For the first time in months, children played outside without fear of alien ships appearing in the sky. But on the Sentinel, now part of a patrol fleet monitoring the edges of the solar system, Captain Lee remained watchful. "Do you think they'll come back?" he asked Dr. Kim, who stood beside him on the bridge, looking at the stars. "Not soon," Kim replied. "But someday, maybe. They'll learn from this defeat." The Vorna retreat had been chaotic and complete. Most of their ships had been abandoned or destroyed. Only 20 of the original fleet of hundreds had managed to escape the solar system, limping away on failing engines. Earth's leaders had declared victory, but scientists like Kim and Park knew better. This was just the first contact with an alien race that now had reason to hate humanity. "We need to understand them better," Kim continued. "Know where they came from, how they live. Why they have no immune systems," Park added, joining them. "It doesn't make evolutionary sense." Lee nodded. "Unless they engineered themselves that way. Maybe they thought they were perfecting their species by removing what they saw as unnecessary biological functions." "Pride," Kim said quietly. "They thought they were beyond the need for basic defenses because their technology was so advanced." "Their mistake," Lee said. "Our advantage." In laboratories around the world, scientists studied the captured Vorna technology and the few alien bodies they had recovered. The discoveries were astounding and disturbing. In Seoul, Dr. Park led a team examining Vorna biology. "Their DNA, if we can call it that, shows signs of extensive engineering," she reported to the Global Science Council. "They've modified themselves over generations, removing what they considered imperfections." "Including their immune systems?" someone asked. "Yes. It appears they lived in completely sterile environments, where no bacteria or viruses existed. They sterilized everything. Their ships, their worlds, their bodies. They had no need for immunity because they eliminated all microscopic threats. Until they met us," Kim added. The Vorna technology was equally revealing. Engineer Choi's team discovered that their ships were grown rather than built, using biological materials that responded to electronic signals. "It's like their technology and biology merged centuries ago," Choi explained. "Their ships are partly alive. Their bodies are partly machines, which made them vulnerable to our bacteria in ways they never expected," Kim concluded. 2 months after the invasion, a new discovery changed everything. A scientific team on Mars found something in the dust near an abandoned Vorna ship. "It's growing," the lead researcher reported with excitement. "The bacteria we introduced are evolving rapidly in the Martian soil where the Vorna materials leaked." Dr. Park flew to Mars to see for herself. What she found amazed her. Earth bacteria were feeding on the biological components of the Vorna ship, creating a small patch of transformed soil that could almost be called living. "They're terraforming Mars," she told Kim when she returned. Our bacteria are using Vorna biological material as food and changing the Martian soil in the process. Unintentional terraforming, Kim marveled. Life finding a way to spread. The accident gave Earth's scientists an idea. If bacteria could transform Martian soil using Vorna materials, perhaps they could speed up plans to make Mars habitable for humans. From invasion to opportunity, Lee said when he heard the plan. That's how humans survive. We adapt. 6 months passed. The fear of the Vorna faded as new projects took priority. Using what they learned from Vorna technology, humans made rapid advances. Ships grew faster. Energy systems became more efficient. The first true Mars colony was established near the site where Vorna materials had helped transform the soil. But Captain Lee, now Admiral Lee, remained focused on the stars. The Sentinel had been upgraded with reverse-engineered Vorna technology, making it faster and stronger than before. We need to know where they came from, he told Earth's Defense Council, and if they're planning to return. The Council agreed. A mission was approved to follow the Vorna retreat path and locate their homeworld. It would be the longest journey humans had ever attempted. Who will you take? Asked the Council chair. Dr. Kim and Dr. Park. Lee answered without hesitation. They understand the Vorna better than anyone. And Engineer Choi. We'll need his expertise with their technology. The mission was set for 1 year later, giving them time to prepare and upgrade the Sentinel further. Earth wasn't taking chances. If the Vorna were planning revenge, humans would be ready. On launch day, the Sentinel's crew gathered on the bridge. The ship had been renamed Earth's Hope, though most still called it the Sentinel out of habit. It looked very different now, larger, with sections that almost seemed to pulse with life, a result of incorporating Vorna biological technology. It feels strange, Choi said, looking at the new controls, using their own technology to hunt them. Balance, Kim replied. They came to conquer us with their advanced technology. We defend ourselves with our advanced biology. Now we merge both to become stronger. Dr. Park checked her laboratory one last time. It was stocked with everything she needed to study the Vorna homeworld from a safe distance. Do you think we'll find them? She asked Lee privately. I hope so, he answered. Better to know where your enemy is than to wonder when they'll appear again. The launch was smooth. Earth grew smaller behind them as they accelerated beyond anything humans had achieved before. Within hours, they passed Mars. Within days, they left the solar system entirely, the first humans to venture into interstellar space. They followed the radiation trail left by the retreating Vorna ships. The trail grew fainter the farther they traveled. But their sensors, enhanced with Vorna technology, could still detect it. 3 months into their journey, they found the first dead Vorna ship drifting in the emptiness between stars. It was completely lifeless, covered in patches of what looked like mold. Earth bacteria, Park confirmed after they sent a robot to take samples. Still alive after all this time. Still feeding on the ship's biological components. Good, Lee said grimly. It means they never found a cure. They continued on, finding more abandoned ships along the way. The Vorna retreat had become a desperate flight, leaving behind their sick and dying. 6 months into the journey, they detected a star system ahead. The radiation trail led directly to it. 5 planets, Kim reported as they approached cautiously. The second one shows signs of artificial structures. It must be their homeworld. Lee ordered the ship to maintain distance and observe. What they saw was both amazing and sad. The Vorna planet was beautiful in a strange way. Perfectly ordered cities covered large sections. Everything was geometric, with no natural randomness. But there were no signs of movement. No ships coming or going. No lights changing. It's dead, Hark said after weeks of observation. The whole planet is dead. Sensor readings confirmed her assessment. The few Vorna ships that had escaped Earth had brought the bacteria to their homeworld. With no natural immunity and no understanding of how to fight microscopic life, their entire civilization had fallen. They built a perfect world, Kim said softly. Too perfect, too sterile. They removed all competing life, all tiny threats. Then when they met real biological competition, they had no defenses left. We should go down there, Choi suggested. Learn what we can. No, Lee decided. We observe only. Record everything. Then we return to Earth with what we've learned. Which is what? Park asked. That life itself is the greatest defense, Kim answered. That billions of years of evolution created strength in diversity, in competition, in adaptation. The Vorna tried to perfect themselves by removing what they saw as flaws. Instead, they removed what would have saved them. Lee nodded. We'll leave warning satellites around their system. If any Vorna remain and rebuild, we'll know. But I don't think they will. The Earth's hope turned for home, carrying the greatest lesson humanity could learn. In the struggle for survival, the perfect can be defeated by the imperfect but adaptable. Earth's messy, competitive ecosystem of countless life forms had created a fortress no advanced technology could overcome. They came to conquer Earth, but vanished before reaching Mars. Defeated not by humanity's weapons, but by life itself. As the ship accelerated toward home, Lee looked at the stars around them with new eyes. The universe suddenly seemed less threatening and more interesting. If Earth could defeat one alien invasion with microscopic allies, what other secrets did life hold?